This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house. Empty of its furniture, still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Short poem by Sufi poet Rumi called The Guest House. Emotions are powerful and an inescapable part of being human. Yet we all live in a culture that, for all its incredible technological sophistication, is almost entirely emotionally retarded. Most of us regularly get swept away by our emotional states, causing chaos and an immense amount of suffering. Some suppress or deny their emotions, others blindly react or impulsively lash out. We spend hours trying to zone out watching television, browsing YouTube, chasing likes on social media, or getting lost in video games. Others gossip and complain or start word fights with strangers on internet comment pages. In other words, we do whatever necessary to distract ourselves from our feelings and emotions. Like an ostrich, we bury our heads in the sand, allowing those emotions to fester beneath the surface, constricting our psyche until they later manifest in the form of fear, anger, violence, anxiety, depression, and other neuroses. In short, aversion never works. You cannot ignore emotional pain, because it tends to snowball, and before you know it, all kinds of dysfunctional behaviors and addictions will accompany the original problem. It takes courage to admit you're in a mess. Being anxious or depressed is nothing to be ashamed of. And if we don't learn to master our mind, we will forever be its slave. The question is, how do we deal with emotions? For centuries, the fleeting and highly subjective world of emotions was purview of philosophers. Emotions feel natural and uncontrollable, built into us since birth like fingerprints. Your heart skips a beat, your nerves dance a little, your face moves in familiar ways, and you are carried away by the experience. For example, it was long believed that the brain's fear circuit was a region called the amygdala. If you Google amygdala fear, you can still find thousands of articles that make this claim. Nevertheless, it's not true. Scientists showed that some people who lack an amygdala can still experience fear, and fear has many faces. Do your eyes widen every time you're afraid? Do you always gasp? Of course not. People who feel fear might scream, cry, laugh, close their eyes, clench their fists, or even stand motionless. The main problem with the classical view of emotion is that emotional life has too much variety to be shoehorned into a bunch of universal fingerprints. And recent scientific evidence no longer support this view either. Emotions aren't universal to all human cultures. For example, the German language contains 3 distinct words for anger with different meanings, while Russian has 2 and Mandarin has 5. Plenty of cultures have emotions that don't translate into English, and there are plenty of emotions everyone feels but fails to explain, like Sonder, the realization that each passerby has a life as vivid and complex as your own. The answer of how emotions are made flies in the face of common sense, because the human brain is a master of deception. Like a magician, it creates incredible experiences as diverse as joy, envy, curiosity, and wrath without revealing how it does so. In the end, your brain's most important job is keeping your body alive. Thus, it spends most of its energy and time on predicting what will happen next. It uses your past experiences to combine information from your body, such as a pounding heart, with information from the world, like the fact that you're waiting in a doctor's office for test results, to construct a variety of emotions like nervousness, fear, and anxiety. In a different situation, such as watching the love of your life walk into the room, your brain might construct an instance of excitement or lust from exactly the same pounding heart. Or if you're exercising, your brain might transform that pounding into an instance of fatigue. The meaning that your brain makes helps it plan your body's next action to keep you alive and healthy. Even with this mounting evidence, the science of emotion is still full of confusion. In short, emotions are your brain's best guesses for what your body's sensations mean, based on your situation. Your brain makes meaning from the identical sensation in different ways, depending on context. That's how emotions are made. They are not built in at birth. they are built in the moment. They are built and experienced in your mind, filtered through your mind's thoughts, memories, judgments, and interpretations. This is where emotions get even more complex. In other words, the world you think you experience out there is actually created and experienced inside your mind. It doesn't matter what you think you're experiencing outside of yourself, whether it's other people, mountains, the sky, or the stars at night. The only place you can ever experience it is within your consciousness. Your consciousness is the carrier of reality, your medium for experience the world of things. I think, therefore I feel. Life is in a scale with emotion on one end and thought on the other. Centuries ago, Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but rather your estimate of it, and that you have the power to revoke at any moment." What can we control? Stoic philosopher Epictetus argues that we actually control very little. We don't control what happens to us. We can't control what the people around us say or do. We can't even fully control our own bodies, which get damaged and sick and ultimately die without regard for our preferences. The only thing that we really control is how we think about things, the judgments we make about things. Which leads us to the second foundational principle from Epictetus. It's not things that upset us, but how we think about things. When something happens, we analyze, make judgments, and thus label things good or bad. In other words, the way you think about something determines the way you feel about it. Such thoughts can be subtle, unconscious, and automatic, arising as an almost subliminal flash of memory from a past experience, thus making it hard to draw a causal connection between thought and emotional response. Each of us experiences life differently. No two people are the same. We can respond very differently to the same things. Though not always pleasant, emotions are not a problem in themselves. Neuroscientists have shown that emotions have a very short lifespan, a mere of 90 seconds to be exact. But when we get stuck on them and caught up in a reactive response pattern, it creates blockages in our system, which eventually lead to all kinds of mental, emotional, and physical problems. That's why the Taoist technique of dissolving emotions is helpful for getting to the root of the underlying thoughts and breaking the cycle of emotional reactivity. First, we must understand that Qi, also known as primordial life force, is connecting all that is with all that will be. It's in the trees, in flowers, in animals, and it's in you and me. As long as Qi flows smoothly, you experience health, vitality, and well-being, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Like water, by its very nature, Qi is meant to flow unobstructed. Otherwise, your energy contracts and blockages are created. The Qi becomes stagnant. And at the sight of these blockages, you experience pain and discomfort, whether physical, emotional, or both. We then resort to all kinds of short-term coping strategies. Coping often becomes a struggle of trying to make our emotions go away. We try to change our thinking to be more positive, cheer up, focus our mind elsewhere, stop worrying. But the truth is that we often lose this battle, because the more we struggle with our emotions, the more they seem to hang around, intensify, and over time, emotions that are not felt fully turn inward and get stuck. People get disordered, but I don't see it this way. You are not disordered, and there's nothing inherently wrong with you at your core. Nothing broken. Rather, perhaps you, like everyone else, has been trained to turn away from yourself in times of intense emotion. But when you allow yourself to fully experience emotions, you move towards healing. In fact, emotions are meant to flow. But what about things like trauma, losing a loved one, or receiving a life-threatening diagnosis, you might ask? I'm not saying these things aren't incredibly difficult or that it won't hurt. But it's that when you move into that emotion and experience the hurt directly, it keeps flowing. 1. Start by mapping emotions in your body. Close your eyes and become aware of where you're experiencing the emotional pain or sense of contraction and unease in your body. Scan your body from head to toe and see if you can pinpoint the emotional discomfort. Is it in your throat, shoulders, chest, heart, or in the pit of your belly? Interestingly, when a team of scientists in Finland asked about 700 people to map out where they felt different emotions on their bodies, they found that the results were surprisingly consistent even across cultures. People drew maps of body locations where they feel basic emotions, top row, and more complex ones, bottom row. As you can see in the picture, hot colors show regions that people say are stimulated during the emotion. Cool colors indicate deactivated areas. 2. Once you've located the source of the emotional pain, label it. What does it feel like? Is it sadness, anxiety, fear, anger, jealousy, or grief? Simply be willing to feel it. How do you perceive it? Can you sense it as a color, shape, or feel it as vibration? Reframe your internal self-talk, shifting from "I am angry" to say, "A feeling of sadness, hurt, anger is arising." At this point, avoid getting carried away by your thoughts as to why you think you're feeling it, such as, "He shouldn't have spoken to me like that," or "I should have done that better." 3. Rather than resisting it, which is our natural tendency when we feel emotional discomfort or pain, just allow it to be there. Emotions are designed to be felt. Emotions have a message for you. Lean in, it's the best way through. Thich Nhat Hanh advised rather than ignoring, denying, or unconsciously reacting to an emotion, we instead treat the emotion as you would treat a crying baby. It's distressed, upset, so bring your nurturing attention to it. 4. Now keep your attention on the emotion. Whenever your mind wanders, bring it back to this part of the body. Spend some time directing your conscious attention on this emotion. You're not trying to change it, you're simply allowing it to be. As you do this, you'll notice that the emotional blockage of energy gradually begins to relax and flow. The Taoist metaphor is that you experience blocked emotion or energy as ice, hard and unyielding. As you spend time holding it in your attention, you'll experience this ice gradually melting into water. It'll start to flow more freely, and you'll feel a great sense of release as it does so. The key is then to keep your attention upon it until this water eventually evaporates into thin air. The sense of release will feel extraordinary, particularly if you've been carrying this unprocessed emotion for a while. Keep in mind that some emotions are easier to dissolve, others take longer and may require more persistence and practice. One last step. Emotions serve as messengers, signals that something in your life is not right and needs change. Spend some time objectively analyzing the situation and find out what thoughts and beliefs triggered the emotion. Creativity can be a great tool for resolving emotional pain. For example, journaling helps examining the underlying thoughts that are causing the emotional response. Or if you are artistically inclined, painting or composing music can also be a wonderful way of expressing your feelings. This helps externalizing and objectifying what you're feeling. In the end, you have the power to choose and question your thoughts. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies your freedom and power to choose your response. In those responses lie your growth and your happiness. Stephen Covey. Our thinking isn't infallible, and our thoughts aren't reality. They're crude second-hand representations of reality and are colored by bias, ignorance, culture, and all other kinds of distorted viewpoints. It's about learning to detach and disidentify from your thoughts, which then gives you the ability to question them and choose the way you judge, interpret, and engage with life. The ability to use your mind rather than be used by it is the key to liberation. It's also the key to feeling good and turning suffering into peace and even joy. If you found value and enjoyed watching, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos.